So, tell us the story about how this bait became known as the Tapp.
All right, that bait, I'd painted over, I think I counted up as either 69 or 72 different color combinations I did. Wow. with just the paints that I had, which was quite a few, but still, I mean, not no 69 cans of paint, you know. But I did a lot of different color combinations, and you could see them here today, some real rare, and I lost my train of thought. That's what I did.
That's all right. Ronnie Tapp.
Yeah. I did a silver shad, and I put just to do it, to see what it would look like, I put a pink stripe in it, but it was under the scales, but the pink was so bright it showed up real good, you know. And I don't know who got that to Ronnie Tapp, but he liked it. And I got to know Gerald Beck, professional fisherman.
Yep.
And they fished together and did lots of things together, and he called me and he says, I need some more of them, or I don't. He says, Ronnie needs some more of them with that little old pink stripe in it. I said, that shad with a pink stripe? He said, yeah. He said, that Ronnie loves that thing to death. He said he catches more fish on it than he does anything else. And see, nobody ever knew that. He wouldn't let them know. Ronnie was good about keeping secrets from even his fishing partners. But that color become known as the Tapp.
So it was the color.
It was the color. Then the boys over in North Carolina just started calling all of them the Tapp. They didn't, at first they didn't even know where they were coming from me. I mean, they just knew these things were showing up. Other fishermen were bringing them over and selling them over there.
Yeah.
And because I wasn't selling anything over there, and except through Gerald Beck, I sold a few over there. And but that's how the Tapp got started, is with that color, and then the boys over there. You know, I mean, even over here in East Tennessee, they kind of got named the Horton too, because I had a color that I give Dwayne Horton. He took it out the first time he fished it. He come back and he says, I got to have more of these plugs, and all of them in that same color. And everybody started calling that color the Horton. Well, it kind of got applied to the bait a little bit, but everybody over here started knowing more and more about me, you know, and that I had named it the Tennessee Tuffy. All my baits are Tennessee Tuffies, not 1, 2, or 3. They're just plain old Tennessee Tuffies.
Yeah.
And I mean, I never thought about putting initials on them or giving them numbers or anything like that. I mean, I was just
you're trying to bump baits out.
Yeah, I just wanted to build baits, you know, and build the best bait I could, and I didn't, you know, my mind was on that design, getting it right, making sure it was right, making sure everything while I was building it was right, and I didn't care about no names, no numbers, or nothing, because you know, one thing is I didn't have to. I didn't build but three different ones. Well, I actually built 4 different ones. There's a few of them, the other one floating around. It's got a straight bill coming out of it. It has more of a body shape like this, except it's squared off in the front. And I was just, you know, I just didn't care about that kind of stuff. You know, I didn't care about being popular or anything. I just wanted to build a good bait, and people say, you know, Steve, you've really done a really good job, and I was happy with that. You know, that's all I cared about.
Yeah.
And that people would buy it and really like it, and fish with it. And
so, how many of these did you sell?
You know, I have no idea.
Hundreds, thousands?
Oh, probably a few hundred.
A few hundred? And then approximately?
I'd say over 1,000.
Over 1,000.
That right there, I don't know. The last
100,000?
no, there's not that many of them out there. That's why I guess that's why they're bringing the price they're bringing today.
Yeah.
But the last batch that I built that was ordered was 1,000 baits, and they all went to the BASS circuit. Gerald Beck said, "Steve, you build them. When I come through Knoxville, I'll stop and pick them up, and I'll take them with me, and I'll sell them, and I'll get you 3 times the amount of money you're getting now."
So what were you selling them for then?
$5.
Oh, jeez. So you went from $4 to $5.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't have much more money in this than I had in that, actually, and I had less time in this because of the design. The one-piece design allowed me not to have to do all the internal work with this and then glue it up and wait on it.
Right.
You know, I stick that weight in there with some epoxy on it, and then in 5-minute epoxy, you know, put it over the side in 5 minutes, you know, I could start handling. It wasn't ready to fish, but I could start handling.
Yeah.
And I glue a dowel in the back of this, and I had my drill press on it, jig set up that drill a hole straight, because it had to, you know, I got a narrow tail, so it had to come back through here really, really straight, and so that's why I had to have that jig. And then after I got the finish on it, I had a wire. I drilled a hole in all those dowels for the screw to go in, and I'd glue that dowel in. And then I'd stick me a little piece of wire in there for the finish to run off of. And then when all the finish was done, I would take and cut that out, pull that wire out, and run that eye screw in there. And
So there's actually a like a pine dowel or something that's in the tail of this?
anything that Lowe's or Home Depot had at the time, but it was always either poplar or oak.
Okay.
You know, because they both grab a hold and they're good woods.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so that's, yeah.
So you have to drill like a quarter, is it a 1/4-inch dowel or 3/16 inch dowel?
You know, I can't remember, but I believe it was a 1/4-inch dowel. I really don't remember. I mean, you know, it's been
a few years.
No, it's been nearly 30 years since I've built one. I mean, you know, I built a bunch of them, and when they had bought me out, I had 200 left, and I asked him if I could keep those 200. They were unpainted and everything. I just had, and I'd already planned on begging him if I had to, because I had 200 lips set out, and I had my wires set out, and 400 hooks set out, and 400 or 600 split rings. I had everything, you know.
Yeah.
Everything set out to keep those 200 bodies, and
yeah.
As gracious as he is, and I was pretty sure he was going to say, yeah, keep them, and of course he did. I mean, he was a great man. He really did a lot for the fishing industry.
Talking about Ed Chambers, owner of Zoom Bait Company, of course. Can you tell us about how did Ed Chambers come to find out about Steve Blazer, and then come to the point to where he actually bought the lure design from you?
He found out about the lure through Gerald Beck, because he used to give Gerald a lot of stuff to fish.
Yeah.
And so he found out about that. And of course, Gerald knew how to get a hold of me, so he got my phone number. And of course, Ed was already building crankbaits. He bought out the Carolina Killer. A lot of people don't know that, but he bought out he bought out a lot of these little bitty bait companies. And what he was doing, he was making plans. And I finally figured it out, what he was doing after he bought mine. He was buying them out because he was taking away all the competition in the area. It was exactly what he was doing. All the competition that he could buy out, he bought out. And he just took all that stuff and he just stored it away. He didn't build none of their baits.
Yeah.
He just built my bait because he knew that bait he could turn and he could make.
It was a money maker.
But he was making other baits too, and I got to see, before he bought me out, I actually got to see what some of the stuff that he was doing, and
he made a respectable bait.
Oh yeah, he made some really good baits, and they're going for, you know. They went for good money back when he was building them, but since he's passed away, they're climbing. They really are.
Yeah.
And he made good baits. But,
yeah.
You know, and when I he called me and we got to be friends, you know, and I mean, he took his time about easing in to buy me out. And he'd get baits, and then he wanted to know about my paint schedules, about painting, you know, and I would take and get a card and I'd draw out the body and I would draw lines on it where what color went where and what color was the first color and the color to get scaled over it so it would actually change. You know, you can use a gray under several different colors and they're going to look different than if you sprayed it on white.
Or black, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, and that's how I come up with so many different color combinations, because I was spraying colors over colors using that scale pattern, and I could come up with a lot of variations in colors and come up with some that I liked real well, and some of them that I didn't, but other fishermen did, so they got painted anyhow. Yeah. But Ed wanted to do, and I didn't have to do it, but I did because he'd been so good to me. I mean, I could call Ed if I had a tournament coming up and I found out a colored lizard that was doing real well on the lake, and I couldn't find it nowhere because generally that's what happened.
Yeah, right before the tournament.
They all go get bought up.
Yeah, exactly.
But I could call Ed and tell him what I needed. He said, yeah, I'll have it right up there to you. And I said, well, send me a bill. And I said, I just need one pack for this tournament because, you know, the next week they're not going to be on that color. They're going to something else. I mean, that's just where East Tennessee fish are. And then I'd get a big old box. And the Zoom Bait Company out, and I said, why did he pack on that? I'd open that thing up, and there would be thousands of lizards in there. I mean, thousands of lizards in there. You know, he was working on me the whole time. I knew it.
Yeah, but soften you up.
Yeah, but still, he didn't have to do that. I would have been happy with the one pack, you know, just because I knew Ed Chambers and I could get it, and these guys couldn't buy out everything and keep me from taking bait to the tournament and fishing. You know, where'd you get that at? Well, I don't know. It's just hanging on a rack somewhere. Yeah. But you know, I bought. I mean, I never had to buy no lizards, and he sent me a box one day, and he said, "This is a failed experiment." He said, "These are all there are of them." He said, "We were trying something and it just didn't work out. It's an ugly thing." So when I got them, I opened them up, and they look like camouflage material. I mean, they look like something a guy in the military would be wearing to hide out in the woods, you know. I mean, they were, and you'd think, God, them things ain't gonna catch them. Them fish ain't gonna be able to see them. They're camouflage. No wonder he sent them to me. He just wanting to get rid of them. But and he didn't think they'd be any good. But I started fishing them, and I started catching a hound out of fish on them things. And nobody else had them. When nobody else on like Douglas or Cherokee could catch a fish on a lizard, I could put one of them on and just wear them out. And nobody could get it. And so, you know, I wasn't about to tell Ed.
Yeah, he's going to put it on the market. And you had a box of 1,000 probably.
Yeah, I did. I used to put them in sacks and put them in my boat. I'd have so many lizards.
Oh, goodness.
But yeah, you know, I finally had a secret that nobody else had, and everybody, see, I had to teach myself all about bass fishing. Nobody would teach me anything. I had one guy take me out and show me how to work a nighttime spinnerbait one time, and then from there, I finally caught a fish on it, and I said, now I know. Yeah. And I started working on changing this, doing that, and I got to be one of the best nighttime spinnerbait fishermen in East Tennessee. I was already really good at daytime spinnerbait fishing, but nighttime spinnerbait fishing is a lot different. And so, you know, other than that, nobody ever, you know, I slacklined the worm. Mm-hmm. Well, you know, you can't do that on a spinning outfit with a slip sinker. You know, pretty soon you're gonna have a big ball of line there on your reel, and
eagles coming down to nest in it.
Yeah, but you know, even with the bait casters, you've got to be careful about that because it'll mess them up. You know, it'll mess your line up and they'll have all that twist in it. But I always slackline fish and I watch my line. And if my line wiggled, I knew that worm didn't move that line.
Yeah.
And I get on fish. If you tight lined a worm, you'd feel them pick it up. When you stood hook and they wouldn't be there. They did, you know, when they felt that pressure, they were just so picky that they wouldn't hold on to it. They'd suck it in, they'd feel that pressure, and they'd blow it right back out. But what you were probably feeling was a blowout.
Yeah.
You know, and
yeah, they already had it.
And so I had that advantage over a lot of people. There were some slackline fishermen around here, but I had that advantage over most people, and so when they got picky, I could still worm fish and catch them. And then when they were real aggressive, all I had to do was wait for that line just to jump out there, you know. And,
so you started making baits the first year that you started making baits.
It was in the early 80s. I don't really remember what year it was, but it was in the early 80s.
And when the Tapp gained its popularity was 89?
Oh no, long before that. Because I was there's some of them out there with lips in them that says Reader's Classic on it, and I did that in 85 and 86.
Okay.
So this bait was just getting popular right before then. But I did this one, and then the other one that looked something like this, but the bill come out straight in it.
Yeah.
I did those three for the Reader Classic. I'd mix them up, you know.
Right.
And they'd take and throw them in their bags and
raffle or whatever. Yeah.
And nobody got any of those except for the guys that qualified for the Reader Classic. Nobody, not even me. If I didn't, but I did. I qualified, so I got one.
Yeah.
But you know, and I'd have 5 extra lips made just in case something went wrong, you know, because I had them hot stamped with silver in them.
Oh wow!
So if something happened, I had 5 extra. But when the classic was over with, I went home and I destroyed those 5 lips so nobody could ever accidentally maybe come to my shop or the house and see one of those, pick it up and stick it in a lure. I wasn't going to let that happen because that was for these guys and these guys only, you know.
Right.
So.
All right. So, what year was it that you sold to Ed?
It was in the. I don't remember the year. It was in the mid '90s when I sold to Ed. Mm-hmm. And I'd known Ed for a long time before he even asked to buy it out. Yeah. You know, and like I said, he already had every color combination that I did that was popular in that. God, I don't know, probably about 25 that I wrote out on cards and stuff. When I sent him down there, he freaked out. He said, there ain't nobody that would have gone to this trouble to do all this. I said, well, you've gone to all the trouble to mold up all them lizards for me. I did something for you. You know, I mean, you've been really good
But
to
that's
me.
the way a relationship should be, you know? Mm-hmm. I mean, you should never look for something in return, but you always be willing to give something, and
I mean,
that's what real friends are.
I always wanted to pay every time I'd call it. I wanted to pay for them baits, but no, man, you ain't paying for no baits. I'm gonna send you them baits, and don't worry about it. And then here, instead of getting a little bit of the envelope, I'd get a great big old box.
So you quit making baits in the mid '90s?
Yes, I did. I quit making.
And you didn't make any baits?
No, I quit because this was all I was building.
Yeah.
And Ed had it, and I've told him, I said, I'll never build another one of these baits because you bought me out. I can give him all the secrets. He's the only one that knows all the secrets to that bait.
Well, if you want him to make your bait, you're wanting him to know all the secrets to make that bait because it's still got your name attached to it.
Right. And so he made it, but he cut it out on a duplicator, and a duplicator cannot cut a flat side. No one has ever come up with a duplicator that can cut a flat side.
Wow.
And so his have just a little bitty arch in it. Well, that takes away from the effectiveness of a flat side to be able to push the vibration out farther. That's the great thing about flat sided plugs.
Yeah.
Those fish can sense them from a greater distance. And, you know,
Yeah, it's like pushing your hand or cupping your hand.
Yeah.
You can feel the resistance with the flat hand.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's one thing that he did, and it didn't with the pros. Now with the amateurs out there and all, I don't know how that went, but I heard from the pros and they told me that they didn't.
It's a good, wonderful thing. The top are made out of rubber, the bottom are made out of
Strings.
That's my wife.
Tigger.
Yeah. She didn't like the one I had on there, so, and she hadn't even heard this one, so.
Oh, jeez.
But I got a different one for everybody, so when it rings, I know who's calling. And
Oh, goodness.
Okay.
So anyway, so he's doing these on a duplicator. And,
yeah, and the pros come back to me and told me, said they just won't catch fish like this. So they'll catch fish and they do a good job,
Yeah.
but it's not your bait. It don't catch the fish. Of course, he had more wood. He was using the same amount of weight, and so it was more buoyant. I designed this lure for nobody but me.
Yeah.
I wanted to satisfy me for a catching lure and a fish. I wanted to do everything I wanted, and this thing was tested in sinks and bathtubs long before it ever went fishing for the first time. And I wanted it to sit there and float just like this on the top of the water without that bill being under the water. I wanted it flat, just like that. So that determined where this weight went to get that, to do that. And that weight's where it is too, to get that tight wiggle. And that tight wiggle also has to do with the way the water flows across this. Because all my baits with a coffin bill in it, except for this thing, because of where the weight's at, in the smaller bill, it's got a wide wobble. This has got a tighter wobble to it too, which most baits that have a slinger lip in it, they have a wide wobble to them. But I wanted it to set straight, because I knew as when this thing was diving and it hit the bottom, and this is how I fish this, most effective way to fish this bait, is you reel it down quick. And as soon as you feel it hit the bottom, you slow way up, and you don't crank it any faster than what it takes to keep it on the bottom. And you don't have to pull it fast at all. I mean, you can fish it really slow and it'll stay down there, because this thing also is almost near neutral buoyancy.
Okay.
And so when it hits something, this is what it does. If it hits something and you feel hard resistance, what I always do, that's when I just stopped reeling, dropped my rod tip, put slack in it, and this thing would float back off of that, just like that, and then it would float, because that's the way it was designed. It floated like this, like a minnow is supposed to. Then it ain't gonna hit something and sit
stay
there.
nose down.
Yeah, and the guys that put lead in the lips to get them deeper, they hit something and they get it loose. You know, if they're doing a stop and go type thing. This is the way their lure is looking to the fish all the time. You know? And of course minnows do feed on the bottom, but they're not looking at the bottom and swimming along all the time. And so that's what it would do. And then it would come back and it would barely start floating up. And that'd give them long enough time to look at that bait and examine that bait. And that's why I like the contrasting colors in it. And when it took off, when you started cranking it again, especially if there was a smallmouth around, they were going to hammer it. They couldn't stand it. But you know, it was lifelike. I mean, it looked like something that's supposed to be in the water, even though that fire tiger doesn't really look like anything anywhere in the country, probably, other than maybe a perch.
Yeah.
Which Douglas never had no perch till they put them in just a couple of years ago. But anyhow, they could examine that bait, and I could paint these different colors over other colors and change them a little bit from what everybody else had, and I could find out the fishermen. And I always tell you what colors. Biller always found out what colors did well, and that's an advantage I had over a lot of people. is because the fish got to examine that bait and they like that color,
Yeah.
you know. And I could do subtle changes, and well, you can see there's two different baby basses right there.
Yeah.
And I have three now. I have three baby basses.
Yeah. I both of those are just cool paint schemes.
And I did that. I did this. This was my first attempt at doing a baby bass, and I didn't like that pattern.
Mm-hmm.
You know, after seeing it, I thought, hey, this don't look good. And I tried everything, I couldn't get it right, and I thought, I just tried diamonds. I liked the way it looked, and so that's what stayed on my baits for forever. And
Yeah.
I think there's one in there that's not in a package. I finally got it.
Yeah. This is a different one.
I finally got the pattern I wanted on that. And the reason I'm doing more lifelike stuff now is because all these new guys are doing so much lifelike stuff.
Yeah.
But they're doing them so lifelike that, I mean, they're camouflaged for a reason.
Right.
You know, they look the way they do to keep from being eaten. And I like contrast, so I keep a really white belly. But the rest of it, you know, it's got the colors of a bass, and it's got the stripe down the side of it, you know, like a bass, and I just really like that when I come up with it. And that's one color. I've got two different colors, two more different colors. They're subtle differences, but the fisherman that buys, if he sees all three of them, and he says, I like that color better, he's going to fish that thing
With more confidence.
Yeah. And he's going to do it effectively, and he's going to start catching a lot of fish on it. The fish probably don't even care that it's going to come in those three different colors,
Yeah.
but the fisherman does.
Yeah.
But I'm not selling them for the fisherman, but if I get back in the business, which I've got one design that I can quickly put into production if I wanted to, then I'm coming up with my new paint schemes for them. Like that, you know, to sell the fisherman on by, you know, to get it out of my hands and into another fisherman's hands, and
then once they get it in their hands and they go out and use it, they're going to catch fish on it.
Yeah,
there's no doubt about that.
That new design will catch. Yeah,
So
it's good. It's a little bit different, but
you've talked about on the boards, especially. I've seen you mention your gill pattern.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me how, you know.
This gill pattern is the one that I used ever since I come up with this bait. Through the whole process of building.
And that's like a really narrow crescent.
It is, and it's got a little point on it right there, and they come to real sharp point down here.
Yep.
And pretty sharp point up here, and it's different than anybody else's. I mean,
Yeah.
the lure collectors, when they look at them, they know whether it's my bait because they can tell right there.
Yeah.
And I can tell when I don't, like when I have a coach dog or a fire tiger, that if I don't put the gill on, then that's just a gill that I'd come up with here recently, and I didn't like it, and so that's my new.
That's your new gill?
Yeah. I tried to come up as close as I could to this, but I couldn't. I cut several of them. And
Because Chambers has that pattern, that stencil.
You know, I think he does. I think I let him have that because I couldn't find it nowhere when I started painting lures here just a little while back. And but I liked that one. And
Yeah,
I mean, I was satisfied with it, and I liked it. And that's a little bit fatter than what it really is.
Yeah.
Because I know that because I sprayed it at an angle, and see, that's not quite as fat, but I didn't spray it all the way down to the bottom. I've worked all that out now to where I get better gills out of them. So, but this is on every half-inch bait that I ever made that I put gills on was with that right there. And that spot is the same thing. It come off the same I used that same pattern. It's just an old.
So that's not a freehand dot. That's a stencil dot.
Yeah, it's sprayed on there. Yeah, I did a few freehand spots, and I thought, no, I'm gonna get me a piece of plastic and cut a hole in it, and it's gonna be pretty. I didn't like it because you can take a look at my eyes, and you can see I don't dot real well. You know, these eyes right here, they come off stencils. These are not, I didn't do too bad on that one. These right here are ugly. They're terrible. It looks like a blind fish. This one's not too bad. This one wasn't as bad about getting it, and these probably right here are probably as crooked as they can be. They are. One's way up
He's
here.
cross-eyed.
Yeah, and that's a stencil too. And I was trying to work out how to do a stencil, and I finally figured out I just do the gold, yellow, whatever stencil, then I'll just take and do the black dot with my little daughter. You know, because trying to get that lined up and everything, it's just really hard to see.
So what's the future for Steve Blazer?
You know what I would really like is for a company to hire me to design a bait for them. I mean, that's what I would really like.
That'd be cool.
But I don't see that happening because after David Fritz won and what's his name won, neither company, they knew these companies knew who was building that bait, and nobody came to me, and so I don't think that it'll ever happen. I'd love for it to happen, and I've got one right now that no one's ever even, not even my fishing partner's ever seen it. And and I'll tell about a little bit about it. It's got a different lip in it. It's still kind of copping lip, but it's not. It's a smaller size body, but it is exactly proportionally smaller to this one, so that I could get
the same action.
I wanted everything in it, but I'd built that body and I'd put this bigger lip in it, and I just really didn't care. So I come up with a smaller lip to make it run better.
Yeah.
And I like that smaller lip, and it's unusual. And
so you thinking of maybe going into small time production to keep yourself busy, keep your mind fresh?
I've been pondering, doing it. I won't build this or this ever again when I sell out what I've got. And of course, we're not going to get fish because everybody's paying way too much money for them to fish them. And I mean, I had to pay that much for a lure. I wouldn't fish it either. But then I ain't paying that much for a lure because I can build lures. That's why I didn't buy those $6 to $7 Carolina killers, because I figured I could do it.
Yeah.
I mean, I've always been that way. I think I can do that, and I'd go after it, because from when I was a kid, at Christmas time, I'd get all these toys, mechanical type toys, and before Christmas night was over with, I had them tore apart, all laying out, trying to figure out how they worked, and seeing, I was always curious about how things work, and trying to get them things back together before Mom and Dad found out was my big problem. Boy, I'm going to kill you. You know how much I had to pay for that? He said, well, Santa Claus brought that, didn't he? Oh yeah, that's right. But from a young, I'd take transistor radios apart, just trying to figure out what I was looking there, and I thought, what is all this stuff? But I would tear anything. My dad would get so mad at me because I would take his tools and they'd be scattered out everywhere, and there'd be something that laying in the floor that who knows what it was, because it was something at one time, but it was just parts. He'd get so mad. Oh, how am I supposed to get that back together? I said, I don't know, because I sure can't help you out. but he, he was, Dad's my mentor. He's the one that started me fishing at 5 years old. He took me fishing. The first fish I caught was a 2-pound bass.
Wow. And
it was a bluegill fish, and he was bass fishing along, going down the bank, and had me sitting in the back of the boat there, and with floating a night crawler out of there. And of course, the bass can't resist a night crawler if it comes along. So that's the only fish I caught that day, but I was hooked. I mean, it just, I was 5 years old, but I knew I was hooked.
That's cool.
And
that's cool.
And all the rest of the kids, I lived in a subdivision, and all the rest of the kids would be wanting to play football or basketball or do something, and Dad would holler at me and say, you want to go fishing? I was gone. Nobody could understand. They just didn't know. Nobody else fished really. A couple guys did, but a little bit, but not much. And but you know, when that say fishing, here I am. Let's go. And I fished too. I'd fish. We would go out right at daylight. We'd come back at lunch. I'd eat lunch. I'd get me whatever I could scrounge up, fish guts, night crawlers, crickets, knock down wasper nests to get the grubs, the bluegill, whatever I could find to fish, and I'd fish the rest of the day. So after Dad got finished with his nap, he'd come and say, "Boy, you ready to go fishing? Let's go." You know, we're going back out on the water now.
Yeah.
You know, and I was catching carp, bluegill, whatever I could catch, I was fishing for. It didn't matter. I just wanted to catch fish.
Yeah.
And then we'd go out and we'd bass fish, and then about dark he'd get me in there, and I'd say, "You gonna get me some supper? I'm hungry." "You gonna eat again?" Dad'd go and not eat much. I never understood that. But anyhow, you know, and he'd take me all the time. We'd go, and of course on the way back home, I'd be sound asleep, you know, and still fish to clean.
Yeah.
And, of course, until I got so old, I was tying flies and molding up flies heads before I ever learned to clean the fish. So, I mean, Dad started me out early, and I'd holler at him. I'd say, "Hey, it's time to start building some flies." "Oh, no, we got plenty of time." I said, "No, we don't neither. I want to build some flies." "Okay, well, I'll go get stuff." So, I mean, you know, I've been doing, you know, stuff for fishing ever since I was a little kid. You know, but now as far as bass fishing, it was the late 70s before I really started doing any kind of serious bass fishing other than the top water fishing that Dad and I used to do, and the trolling we used to do. Mm-hmm. And the top water fishing only lasted about a week or two, and then the rest of the time it was trolling, and but I like catching bass trolling too. And,
yeah.
But
Buck Perry made a flipping living out of trolling.
Yeah. I know some good trollers too. I mean, they'd get up on Douglas, and man, they would catch more big bass because they could get them plugs so far down.
Spoon plugs, the old bombers and the hellbenders.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and see, that's what we used to fish. And I've been thinking about trying to build a backup bomber and putting a metal lip in it even.
I still swear that if someone would come back out with that bait, it would catch fish.
Yeah,
Fish haven't seen it for 30 years.
And it caught fish, an unreal amount of fish.
The world record smallmouth out of Dale Hollow caught on a Bomber 600. 609, I think, was the actual pattern. Yeah, people don't. They just look at them like, "Oh, that's
the new thing comes out, and everybody jumps on it." It's just like,
exactly.
You know, you got the swimming jig, chatterbait, you know, that thing, and that's just a monstrous thing right now. You know, fish by-approach piles and stuff, and the bass eat it up. I want to tell you something. I only own one of them, and I ain't fishing it. I like my spinnerbaits. But I guarantee you I can take my spinnerbait and fish with anybody with a chatterbait. Anybody.
And out-catch them. Yeah.
Because I know what I can do with spinnerbait, and there's things that I can do with spinnerbait they can't do with a chatterbait.
No, hell no.
So, you know, I mean, I fish spinnerbaits in ways that blow people's minds.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I did some strange stuff, and I only know two of the guys that actually used one pattern that I used, and they were both top-notch spinnerbait fishermen too. You know, I mean, people just, even when me and Mark were fishing together, and I had to use that to catch. You know, he wouldn't be catching nothing on a spinnerbait, but I'd be catching them because I'd be using it. But he couldn't. He never did figure out what I was doing.
Yeah.
You know? I mean, it just didn't look like I was doing anything.
Spinnerbait is a multifunctional tool, and you can make it do whatever you want it to do just by changing blades out, colors, put a trailer on it, don't put a trailer on it.
Yep. Bigger
it's
heads, smaller heads, just, you can do,
single blade, double blade.
yeah, triple blade. Some of them even got 4 and 5 blades on them now, and
Yep.
which I always, and I'm not a big willow leaf fan. Never have been. I fished it some when they just wanted it. I would fish, and
Yeah.
outside of that, I never did like to have a willow leaf on. I fished. My main blade would be a Colorado or a Indiana blade. And then I have.
Love me some Indiana blades. That's the best blade.
I still like the Colorado. I've done better on the Colorado, but I would use some of the cheapest blades. People wouldn't believe some of the stringers fish I caught on blades that nobody else would even put in their tackle box, let alone stick on them. They're cheap, but they're thin, and they make noise. They make a lot of noise, and they make noise that nobody else, no fish hadn't heard because nobody else will fish them. You know, people just don't. You know, you gotta think outside the box.
Yep.
You know, and that's kind of how all this come about.
Yeah.
Is thinking outside the box, and
Well, Steve, I really appreciate you spending time going through your bait making career. You know, there's a lot of people out there that, like you said, you had no idea that this whole collection thing is going. I mean, your baits are selling for $150 a piece here.
Mm-hmm.
That's a testament to you. And you know, I feel honored that you would give me the time to sit down and interview you for.
yeah. Well, I'm glad to do it, and you know, I like for the story to be out there because other people have tried to tell the story of the bait, and it's really all messed up. You know, it's
Yeah.
just,